Hey everybody, it's Yoli Medina, and I'm here to talk about the Kohberger case, which I've been following or trying to follow. So there's a lot going on in the Kohberger case, not only with the court, but also outside of the court. So I just learned not too long ago that there's a documentary that's going to be coming out on this case. And for those of you who are not familiar with this case and happen to run across this video, I'm just going to give you a quick background on this case. This is the Idaho 4 case, and Brian Kohberger is accused of brutally unaliving 4 students at the University of Idaho. And these 4 students were at a house near the University of Idaho, and the 4 students are Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. And this has been worldwide news, so those of you who haven't heard of it must be under a rock. But in any event, some people are under a rock, and that's okay. I prefer to be under a rock myself. But in any event, this is the case that's going to trial in August, and the unalivings happened in November or on November 13th, 2022. And one of the things about this documentary is that it's coming out on July 11th, and it's a 4-part series on Amazon Prime. And witnesses regarding this case, those who were at the 911 call when the 911 call was made, are going to be discussing this case on this documentary. And it's a 4-piece documentary, and it's supposed to go into August. So it's probably going to be a 4-part series that goes into August right before the trial. So the timing is interesting, but I mean, there's nothing that anybody can do about it because prior restraint on speech, free speech, is not something that is looked upon as fair. But, when it comes to a fair trial for the defendant, it may impede on his fair trial, and the court's going to have to make, adjustments as the court sees fit. And the attorneys for Brian Kohberger are also going to have a harder job. And I put that on the attorneys because publicity is always going to be around. Things are going to pop up, and it's the attorney that has to gauge the jurors when they're doing voir dire on how they react and how to get an unbiased juror. And sometimes they use jury consultants. And so Brian Kohberger, being the defendant, he is dependent upon the public defender's office who's funding this case. So whether or not they're able to do that and get a jury consultant to assist in the selecting of the jury, that's something that we don't know. But if I were the defense counsel, I would ask for funds for that because of all the publicity. And I would not ask for a continuance of the trial. But I'm not Brian Kohberger's attorney. I'm not even a criminal defense attorney. But that's just my take. Now, I don't know how the judge is going to react to this documentary that's coming out on July 11th. I'm sure he might have something to say after it comes out. But before it comes out, I don't know that there's anything that the judge can do or say. Defense counsel might bring it up, but again, prior restraint on speech and trying to stop this is not going to work. It's just not. So that's the one thing that's going on outside of the court. There's also in the court documents, which are basically sealed. So I've had people wanting me to talk about the court documents, but they're sealed. There's nothing really to discuss. I mean, there's the motion to continue trial by the defense, and there's an opposition to that motion by the prosecution. But aside from that, everything else is sealed. But what stood out to me, what caught my attention, is the the defense's request for an independent analysis of evidence. So this is kind of interesting because some people think it's a DNA, some people have opinions, but if it were the DNA, I would think that this would have been done a long time ago. And in terms of testing the DNA that was found at the crime scene that was labeled unknown male DNA, it's kind of hard to do because if the defense wants to do that, they would have to request the samples, and like they don't have the ability, let's say like the feds, to be able to go into different databases, whether they're allowed to or not, and come up with a profile. They don't have that ability. And in that regard, that's why I think it was unfair that the feds were able to go into a database that was not allowable or that was not within policy. They weren't allowed to do that, but yet they got the information and they were able to target Bryan Kohberger based on that. And that brings me also to the jury instruction that is sealed. I mean, all the jury instructions are sealed, which is beyond me. But the jury instruction that is sealed is the tip that led to Bryan Kohberger in terms of what are the parties going to tell the jury as to how Bryan Kohberger was a suspect. How did they find him as a suspect? So there's some jury instruction out there that's supposed to educate the jury on how they came to Bryan Kohberger being a suspect. And I don't know what it says because it's sealed. So trying to go over the documents, new documents, they're sealed. I don't know. And people have asked me as to what do you think that what do you think that the defense is trying to independently analyze? What evidence? Well, I don't know because it's sealed. But if I had to take a guess, my guess would be it's the electronics, the phone, Bryan Kohberger's phone, because that was the subject of the leak in Dateline, one of the subjects. And the phone data was allegedly leaked, and it seems like it was leaked by law enforcement. But at least that's what the court gave the impression of, because it was obvious the court was looking at the prosecution. So my guess is that the defense wants to inspect the electronic data on Bryan's phone because law enforcement, whoever it may be, whether it's the FBI, Idaho State Police, or Moscow, Idaho, they are the custodian of records for that evidence because they are the ones who gathered the evidence and downloaded it or copied it. And so because Dateline featured phone evidence from Bryan Kohberger's phone, it may be that the defense wants to inspect the evidence regarding the phone to see if anything was tampered with, to see if anything was removed or deleted. It could also be that the defense it could also be that the defense wants to inspect the videos of the car because in the Dateline episode, there was a video that had never been seen before by the public, and that premiered on the Dateline episode. So perhaps the defense wants to inspect the video that is held by the law enforcement, who are the custodian of records, and they have a duty to protect the evidence. So they may want an independent analysis of all of that electronic data. Now, that's just my guess. So it could also be the car. Maybe they want an independent analysis of inspecting the car because we know that Ann Taylor, well, some of you may know, but Ann Taylor subpoenaed the dealer who sold the car to the Kohbergers, the white Elantra. So it could also be something related to the car. But my least, well, what I think is not the issue of the evidence that defense wants to independently analyze is the DNA. And the reason why I say that is because if they were going to analyze the DNA on the button snap that is allegedly Brian Kohberger's DNA, I think they would have done that a long time ago. And it was up to law enforcement to analyze the DNA that was left, the blood DNA that was left on the handrail of the stairs and outside on a glove. And then there was also some DNA under Maddie Mogen's fingernails that was exculpatory to Brian Kohberger. And I think that would have been done a long time ago, but I have no idea. It could be the DNA. I don't know. Could be I have no idea. Maybe they want to match a DNA to some alternate suspect. I have no idea. And that's the point of this, is that to talk about these documents, it's almost useless because they're all sealed. So one of the other things that was in the documents, that is in the title of the document, is that the defense filed a motion, and it's not titled this way. It's titled as access and to evidence and a fair investigation. But basically, the defense is asking for a special investigation regarding the leak, the information that was leaked to Dateline. And so they're asking for a special investigation, which means they're asking for a special prosecutor to be appointed and investigate the leak. At least that's my understanding of what that is. Again, the document is sealed. So the defense or the prosecution filed a response to that motion. They didn't file an opposition. They didn't file an objection. They filed a response. We don't know what that response is because it's sealed. So those are the things that are going on in this case. Everything's sealed. So anything that I talk about is conjecture. Conjecture. I can't say that word. It's speculation. And that's why I haven't really made any videos. There's nothing really to discuss. But, the implications of having a special investigation at the eve of trial, when trial is supposed to start in August and jury selection is supposed to start in late July, and then we have this documentary coming out on July 11th, which is a 4-part series, and it's probably going to go up to the time of trial, where witnesses are going to be talking about their experience. It's kind of strange, the timing of it all. But we also know that there's a book by James Patterson, and I believe the documentary is based on that book, that's going to come out before trial in July. So there's a lot of things coming out, and really there's nothing that anybody can do about it. Not that I know of anyway, because it would be restraint on speech, future speech, prior restraint. That's not something that the Constitution allows. It may allow it, and it just doesn't allow for a prior restraint on free speech. So those are my thoughts on what's going on. I guess, June 18th, there's going to be a hearing on the motion to continue the trial, and then that's going to be open to the public, and then there's going to be a hearing on the alternate suspects, which is a closed hearing, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork. And I say the woodwork because there are people who may have been around, but now they're saying certain things. And I'm not going to mention anything in particular, but as trial looms closer, there's things coming out. And I have to look at those things that are coming out with a critical eye, because why didn't they come out sooner? These are things that one would think that would come out sooner. And there's issues with the DoorDash driver now, that there's possibly a witness. The DoorDash driver witnessed something. There's a bunch of things going on, and they're distractions, really. I mean, we really need to see if this special investigation, if the motion for the special investigation is granted, what that means for the trial, and go from there. I mean, there's not much else that can be discussed about the documents. And so I understand people want me to talk about the documents, but the only thing I can say is they're sealed. And what is sealed sometimes is listed in the name of the document, and sometimes it's not. I mean, there's orders that are sealed that we don't know what the order was for. Like, for example, there's an order that was sealed. There's an order, well, back up. There's an order granting access to sealed evidence that is sealed. So I don't know who asked for access to sealed evidence. We can't see the order. There's just an order sealing it. So it's really not fruitful to really go over the documents. I just don't see that anybody can really intelligently analyze what's going on. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I mean, you might not think anything because there really isn't anything to think about. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, we just have to wait for the hearings and see what happens. But if you do have some thoughts, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next video.